Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155 from UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcast. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championships, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championships, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
All right, now, thank you for tuning into the GSMC Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm your host, Tate, and I got my good buddy with me. How you doing there, Will?
What's up, everybody? I'm doing good.
Excellent. So we have been patiently, I've been patiently waiting to do this show here. Today we are talking about UFC 217. We're going to talk about what happened. I still want to call this UFC New York and just UFC New York 2. I don't know why they, you know what I mean? They need to make that just an event. Because
they need to bring it back. I mean, they stopped doing that after the hundreds or so. They just started making it the bill for the who's fighting who. And they used to have cards where it's just like stacked. Or
yes. And I'm going to tell you, my first question to you on this event is, in my opinion, this was the best card in UFC history. And that is crazy for me to say that. But as far as, now this is just my opinion, it was my favorite card ever. Never have there been three champions that have been dethroned. What was your thoughts as far as this card and where it ranks among your favorite cards of all time?
You know, I got to agree with you. I mean, I'm still a little bit high from that card. I still am riding that high. I mean, it hasn't fallen off. I'm just so excited about what that card did and what it meant for the future and what it was like. I had it tied for 190 with UFC 194 when they introduced Reebok when I first saw it. But now it's easily the best.
Now, so 194 is your second favorite.
Yeah.
100 is was my favorite.
No, that's my third favorite.
Okay.
Yeah,
UFC
I like
100 was my favorite card. I didn't think they ever put a card better than that one. But this one delivered. And this card actually showed the power of George St-Pierre. There was a lot of people, a lot of fans that didn't really even know George St-Pierre. The ticket sales, the pre-ticket sales were kind of sluggish. But by the time the event actually went on, the ticket sales went through the roof.
They crushed the $1 million mark. They're still counting the numbers right now.
And you know what? The UFC really needed this event because pretty much all the events were very lackluster. So, you know, and the UFC was kind of hanging their hat on that McGregor-Mayweather fight, but I don't count that as a UFC event. So I thought this year was a huge down year for the UFC, but this card right here just really brought them back to me.
Yeah, there's been a few cards this year where it's stacked on paper. But
on paper, yes.
Yeah, this one truly delivered. This is what I've been waiting for, and they exceeded expectations. And
so to dive right into it, as I mentioned before, we have three brand new champions. Will, who are our three new champions?
We got George St-Pierre.
Nicely done. All right, so we got GSP.
We got Rose Namajunas. Namajunas? Why did I do that? Why did that happen?
I'm like, what?
There we go. We got Thug Rose.
I'm going to say Thug Rose. All right.
And then we got TJ Dillashaw.
And I just want the record to show I picked GSP by KO. Just letting the record show.
Yeah, okay.
I picked TJ Dillashaw by KO. Just letting the record show. But I sure as hell did not think that it could be possible that Joanna Jedrzejczyk was going to lose. So I was wrong on that one.
Hey. You did actually predict that the chant, like in your kind of assessment of the fight, you did predict that Thug Rose would have that opening to beat her. But we didn't see it happening like that at all.
I did not. I mean, I did. You know what, though? You're kind of right. I did talk about how Joanna kind of I personally think she's a slow starter and how she's been able to get caught a couple of times. We'll talk about that. We're not going to dive into that fight too much, but I did bring that part up. We'll be talking about that shortly. So let's dive right into this, and let's just go to the main event. George Rush St-Pierre against Michael the Count Bisping. What was your take on that fight?
Man, there's a lot of takes that you can have. First of all, the fact that he was moving up in the division. He did not look like he was moving up in the division. That man was gigantic.
He was jacked. I mean, George St-Pierre was enormous. I was really surprised. He was super fit, but I thought he was the bigger man, and without question, he was the stronger man. Do you agree?
Oh, most definitely. Even everyone was saying it. Or everyone was saying that there was going to be issues with that. Michael Bisping's a bigger guy. It's going to be too much for him. That man had no problems at all.
As a matter of fact, I think the Count had more troubles with the size than George St-Pierre did.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I've seen Michael Bisping wrestle with other 185ers, and he has great takedown defense for what he is.
He had no takedown defense against George St-Pierre.
No, he didn't. He's just too much.
You know, they were talking about, the 4 years of being off. Did you think George had ring rust? When I look at it, I was looking at this as I'm trying to find excuses to say there's ring rust, but George looked crisp and clean.
He looked crisp and clean, but I did see some ring rust. I saw a little bit of some shots that wouldn't have land normally on George, but then you also have to give Michael Bisping the credit, moving up in weight and whatnot. But I think that as he gets more time in the division, if he's choosing to go that route, he's going to be crisp again, like crisp as we saw him in his prime.
So when we looked at this fight and you break it down in the first round, George, I thought George was he showed that he was a superior fighter. His movement, the jab, the shots. I don't think Michael Bisping was prepared for this George St-Pierre. But then I moved into the second round, and I thought George was looking really good in the second round. But at the end of the second round, he started to. I thought he was starting to slow down. And one of the questions that kind of popped in my head was George just too big, and was he running out of gas? That was one of my questions when you look at the fight and as things were going. And then in the third round, also in that second round, George took Michael down, and the Count looked really good on his back. He really cut up George with the elbows. He caused a lot of damage, but it was clear to me that it was the second round was St-Pierre's as well, and then the third round, George got a little bit of second win, and then it was over, and it was a third round stoppage, but a rear naked choke. One of the things I was surprised about is how deep that choke got in. It looked like you were doing like you were in, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practice, and you were practicing putting in the rear naked choke, and your opponent let you put it in. It was that deep. How did you break it? How did you see the round by round kind of breakdown?
All right, so first round, what I was really delighted to see, and what I've been really missing from GSP is all that technique that he has. But in this fight, he was extremely aggressive. He was going for that overhand right. He was trying to finish the fight.
Yes.
And that may have played a role in his cardio. And another thing that happened in that round is he got a takedown. And in an interview, he just said that he received a sharp elbow to the back of his head, and that kind of injured his neck. And it was a minor detail, but he started feeling that in the second round, and he was saying that related to his ability to hold Bisping down and kind of with his mobility. Okay. And then in the second round, I saw GSP was continuing his work, and Michael he was letting off a little bit, and Bisping was getting back into the fight, landing some right hands of his own, and that's where I kind of saw a little bit of the ring rust that I was alluding to earlier. And then you had the whole fiasco between the rounds with Michael Bisping's cup breaking and GSP not getting his mouth guard, so that allowed time for both of them. I think it was kind of beneficial for George at that time, now that I'm thinking about it.
In hindsight, I could say that was a little beneficial to George, because I did think George was a little winded that one. Also, at the end of the first round, you kind of pointed this out when we watched the fight again, that it looked like George was a little disappointed after that first round. And I kind of thought it was like, I think George really wanted to knock him out in the first round.
Oh, definitely. I mean, right before, with like 15 seconds remaining in the round, he landed a nice Superman jab and a spinning heel kick that landed on the top of Bisping's head and rocked him a little bit. And that was, I think he was sad that he wasn't able to finish that. And that was really a beautiful display of technique, though.
Okay, and so I interrupted you. You were talking about the second round, and then you were rolling into the third. So I'll let you keep on going on that.
And the third round, GSP definitely got his second wind, and he was able to kind of dictate the pace with his leg kicks and kind of getting Bisping a little bit more grounded, and that led to the left hand that knocked Bisping down, and a series of elbows that would have taken out a lot of fighters. But credit to Bisping, he's a champ for a reason, and he's fighting through it, defending himself. Not intelligently, per se, but defending himself.
Yeah, he was defending himself. I had no problem. Initially, when I first saw it in the thick of things, I was like, maybe they should stop this, because it was like George St-Pierre's elbows had a laser sight on them. They were landing every single one of them. I didn't think he missed an elbow. Yeah,
but you really saw Mike's heart in that moment.
Yes,
he never gives up in any fight. And he gave up his back. GSP landed a shot to open up the neck and sunk in one of the deepest rear naked chokes that you've ever seen in your life. And I don't think Bisping had a chance to tap at all. He just went out.
No, I mean, even I think that choke, I've never seen a rear naked choke in that deep before, ever. Maybe like in practice, but you don't get a rear naked choke in that deep. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're completely right, and that's a huge part of GSP's game that he doesn't show as much, because he's so concentrated on nullifying opponents in the past. With his wrestling, he can use his defensive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to fight off against him, but he is a black belt under John Danaher, Faraz Zahabi, and Renzo Gracie. So the ground game is there, and I loved how aggressive he was. And with that said, we got a new middleweight champion of the UFC.
And he's technically sound. Now, at this point, let's take a look at both of these guys. Now that GSP is champ, and it's already been established that, I know Tyron Woodley was saying he wants the next fight and everything, but it's in George's contract that he has to fight Robert Whittaker. How do you see that fight going? Because, one, do you think the fight between George and Robert Whittaker will happen? Two, if it happens, how do you see it going?
Well, I'm now, after seeing this fight, I hope it happens. There's unknown variables to this, because Robert Whittaker's coming off an injury himself. That's why he wasn't able to fight with Mike to unify the titles. And then the other factor is GSP is going to get more acquainted to the weight division if he chooses to stay, and he's going to get crisper, and he's not going to have as many holes as he had in this game.
Yes, I agree.
But the thing is, Robert Whittaker has the age advantage and he has a size advantage. I don't think he has a technique advantage.
All right, there's where I'm gonna disagree with you on. And it's crazy to say this. I can't believe I'm having this conversation with you. Robert Whittaker is not going to have the size advantage on George St-Pierre. I think George St-Pierre is going to go into this fight as the bigger, stronger guy. Second of all, and the reason what blows me away is the fact that I'm even debating with you that George St-Pierre could walk into the ring as the bigger, stronger guy just makes no sense to me in my head. But he was the bigger, stronger guy compared to Michael Bisping. And Robert Whittaker, compared to other middleweights, is a much smaller guy. I personally think this is the perfect fight for George St. Pierre's next fight. And I do agree, even though Whittaker is going to be the younger fighter, I think the stronger fighter, George St. Pierre, the more technically sound fighter, George St. Pierre. I think of any of the middleweights, and I think Robert Whittaker is just amazing. He's the best guy. Matter of fact, in middleweight or welterweight, I think Robert Whittaker is the best matchup for George St. Pierre next. Do you agree or disagree?
I think it's the best fight that you can put on at this moment, bar none.
Yes.
I don't have that issue. What I see with Whittaker, and what I was really impressed with his performance against Yoel Romero, is that he carries. I think he carries a size better in terms of the strength that he has and the balance between the strength and the cardio.
Yes, I agree.
Point.
Yes, I
agree.
agree.
I think that's going to play a huge factor because I haven't seen George acquainted to the weight class as I think he can get in his next fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really touch on that, but I think that at this time, Whittaker was better, but then he's also coming off the injury. So
well, that's one of the things I was going to say. Number one, George got tired. It looked like he got tired, but I don't know if it was a neck injury or if he got tired. But it looked like he was getting tired and he was breathing hard. This next fight, his cardio will be even better. This is a brand new body for George St. Pierre, which is kind of weird to say, but he'll have months to adjust. Not to mention George has always worked really hard on his cardio, so George will be able to adjust to the new body and the new weight. He'll have plenty of time to do that. And the next thing is, George St. Pierre's timing is going to be better because it won't be 4 years off. And so I think he'll be a much crisper fighter, where Robert Whittaker, coming off of an injury, who won't be able to train like he normally will, is not going to be able to train or hasn't been able to train properly and is coming off of a layoff. I see rust. I see timing issues. This is why I think this would be the perfect fight for George St. Pierre.
Now, let me say this. Something we haven't addressed. George St. Pierre, bar none, is the best game planner and implementer of a game plan that the UFC's ever seen, in my opinion. I don't think that there's any other fighter that can game plan for specific opponents and just nullify them and have the answer for them like we've seen with George St. Pierre. I can't point to any other version.
I'm thinking hard. I'm thinking really hard, and I'm trying to think like, I can think of guys in boxing. Like Larry Holmes was the best game planner I've ever seen of anyone ever. I agree with you. I never thought about that. I wasn't expecting this question. George has, over the years, gotten a ring with people that should have overwhelmed him, and he makes adjustments. You watch the first fight with Matt Hughes, and then you look at the second fight with Matt Hughes. George, there was a huge difference. George adjusts. Give George time, he can adjust to anyone. And that's one of the things where George will be prepared for the best Robert Whittaker available. I don't know if Robert Whittaker will be prepared for this George St. Pierre.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And the thing about them is that I think Robert Whittaker, when he was climbing up in the ranks, he actually modeled a lot of his game actually after GSP. And it's going to be very interesting style clash, and I'm really interested to see that because they're great strikers. They have great wrestling ability. The one advantage that I would give George over Whittaker, hands bar none, would be in the grappling Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aspect of the game. But I'm liking that fight for George now. I'm starting to think about it.
Oh, I like it. I like that a lot. I even think it's crazy to say this, but it's the least dangerous fight for George because, I look at Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley can knock you into next week. no one's going to be foolish enough to put Conor McGregor in there. There's, and if it's not Robert Whittaker, the next best fight for him is Anderson Silva. I think the other ones are just too rough and too dangerous, in my opinion. Now let's switch. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
I got a lot of thoughts. I don't know that the top 5 is a interesting place because you have Jacare Souza, who would try to implement the wrestling aspect of the game and try to
go. And that's one of the things. I mean, you're talking about that top 5, but before we talk about that top 5, let's talk about Michael Bisping and what happens to him next. Does he retire or does he keep going? Because he's been kind of talking about keeping going. And if he doesn't retire, what's next for him? When I look at him and I look at the top 15 and I say, retire. It's a bad matchup. The most attractive matchup I see is to finally have that Yoel Romero-Michael Bisping fight. I don't like that for Michael. What do you see for Michael?
Yeah, I don't like that either. I don't think that's a good fight for him. I think the best fight that you can literally put on for him is a Legends matchup with Vitor Belfort. Let him try to avenge his loss. I mean, I don't think it's...
You know what? You're kind of right. That's a fight. There's a guy, you know what? I apologize. I've been saying for a while that there's, the top 15 would be really rough for him. The top 10 would definitely. But if you took Michael versus Vitor, I would take Michael. I would take Michael with ease. That would be the perfect exit route plan for him.
Both of them.
Put Michael versus Vitor as the final event. It would be a main event. It would be a money fight, and I think Michael would leave. Because I think he would win, and he could leave instead of going to sleep and being put to sleep by George St-Pierre. His last fight is him beating Vitor.
Yeah, and the history lesson to those fans that may not know, Vitor Belfort, when he was on testosterone replacement therapy,
okay,
which I'm not that big a fan of.
Let's not make any the bad accusations, but yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, he was the one that actually head kicked Michael Bisping and injured his eye. When eye injury that Michael Bisping has opted out not to fix until he retires. And
which was a liability in that fight against George St-Pierre because George rotated to his bad eye and kept using that as a game plan.
Yeah, another game plan ace decision by George St-Pierre. But I think that Michael Bisping has some unfinished business with Vitor Belfort.
That would be a good match. It's either there's 3 fights that you could make for Michael. I like the Vitor. I don't know if that's going to be on anyone's radar. I love the Yoel Romero fight as far as, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of bad blood there. Do you do another Luke Rockhold fight? Do you do a Chris Weidman or Anderson Silva? It's really just Yoel. Yoel is the only fight that really is left there for him.
Well, on paper, considering how Michael Bisping conducted himself as a champion, he could fight anybody, and they'd be loving to fight him because he called out the entire middleweight division.
No, I agree with you. Everybody wants to fight Michael. I'm just saying, as far as what would the UFC do, as far as what's a money fight, what's the best situation? Michael has maybe 1 fight left, at most 2, and I look at the Luke Rockhold fight or Yoel Romero.
Yeah, I look at Yoel Romero, Luke Rockhold, maybe giving Anderson Silva another chance to avenge his so-called loss.
He didn't lose.
And I see Vitor Belfort as another thing. And everything else, it doesn't interest me if I'm a fan. It doesn't interest me if I'm the UFC brass. I just want to see those fights because there's history there, and it just makes sense at this time.
Now, is there anything else you want to talk about about the recapping this fight before we move on to some of the other fights?
I was just so happy to see it finally happen. There was so much talk about it. They were teetering on whether or not to have the fight in general. They had the whole press conference, and then everything was leading up to it, and then they finally made it. And I'm just very happy and grateful for the UFC to be able to put on this fight.
You know, this is kind of out of order, but when you look at this card, it is rare that you say nice guys win. It's always nice guys finish last. But when you look at the 4 fights, the last 4 fights, could you find 4 nicer people? You know, George St-Pierre, super nice guy. It's weird to call a fighter sweet, but George St-Pierre is a sweet guy. TJ Dillashaw, super classy. Rose, you know, I just want people to be nice to each other.
I'm just regular.
You know, and then, you know, Wonder Boy, who we haven't talked about either. Super nice guy. It was all the super nice people that actually won that fight. Speaking of some of these fights, we will be covering all of these fights as we continue. We're going to take a quick break, pay some bills, and then we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, we're back, and as usual, I'm Tate, and I got Will with me. And we just got done talking about our new middleweight champion, George Rush St-Pierre. Still hard to even call him middleweight champion. Chris Weidman kind of said it best. It took him a long time to say that Michael Bisping was the middleweight champion. It was hard to get used to. And then finally he got used to saying Michael Bisping is the middleweight champion. And now it just blows his mind that think that George St-Pierre is now middleweight champion, and it's bizarre.
Well, I don't have any issues. George St-Pierre has always been a champion in my eyes. I may be a bias in that aspect. He's just an awesome ambassador to the sport, and I just love what he represents.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, like I said, that when we ended this the last segment, the good guys definitely won this event. If there's anyone that you'd want to make your poster child for the UFC, George St-Pierre is it, without question. Now, we're going to move on from that George St-Pierre match, and we're going to talk about that co-main event, in which now we have a brand new champion, TJ Dillashaw. And TJ wins by second round knockout.
Yep. Second
round knockout. Hint, hint. Somebody predicted that. And
hey, my prediction was pretty. As any fight, like this fight was a pick'em fight.
Oh yes,
and
it was.
We saw kind of both sides play out.
Oh, absolutely. We'll talk about that. But when you look at this fight. Personally, I went back and I've watched the fight 4 times. And my first take is when Cody rocked TJ at the end of that first round, if there was 30 seconds left, there is no second round. The bell saved TJ Dillashaw. When TJ Dillashaw got up, he was rocked, he was wobbly. When he walked, if you track this path, it was a half moon as he walked back to his corner.
Yeah,
I mean he was rocked. I went back even when we were watching it today again before the show, and I kept going rewinding and watching it. He does if 30 seconds more, he doesn't make it out of that round. But then the second round, I was really impressed by, one, TJ recovered nicely, and then his corner saying throw kicks. And that changed the game. Do you agree?
I do agree with the way that the kicks were changing the game. And the thing about, if you watch the first round, Cody was a lot more disciplined in that first round. He was evading strikes. He was getting right out of the way, right out of the range of Dillashaw. And Dillashaw was still throwing the kicks. He was still landing, but he wasn't able to really make Cody worry about them. But I think that knockdown was the worst thing that could happen. Both knockdowns. The one that happened previously when they were training partners and the one that happened at the end of that first round. It gave Cody this confidence to kind of stay with his game plan and not adjust to it. Whereas when the round ended, TJ got some instruction from his corner. He regrouped himself, and he started throwing them at different angles while Cody was just solidifying himself to the ground and really trying to get the knockout.
Cody said twice at the beginning of the round, before the round started, Cody looked over at TJ and he says, "You're not making it out of this round." And then when it came to the middle of the ring, he told him again, "You're not making it out of this round." Cody's plan was at that point to knock TJ out, and he was expecting the same TJ Dillashaw from the first round, and he got a different TJ Dillashaw. That's one of the things that separate good fighters from great fighters, is you can look at a situation and say, if I stick with our current game plan, I'm going to get destroyed. TJ looked at that and said, TJ's corner looked at that and said, no, we're going to change it. And I thought the kicks, whenever TJ would engage, Cody would bite down hard, and he would get into a firefight with TJ Dillashaw. And Cody was the stronger, faster, more powerful fighter. TJ did something to negate that by, instead of every shot was like, I'm going to engage you and Cody's going to fire back. But when the kicks started coming in, TJ could keep distance from him. That was the biggest thing, is that he kept the pressure. It eliminated a lot of the pressure that Cody was putting on him. Do you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And then on the other side, kind of the pivotal point and the pivotal advantage that Dillashaw had in this fight is that experience. I mean,
yes,
he's been knocked out by John Dodson before. He kind of wanted to get into a striking battle with him, and he wasn't diversifying his game. And then if you look at the previous fight when he fought with Dominic Cruz, where he was headhunting himself, going for that knockout, he learned that you got to take your time sometimes. You got to implement the game plan, and they may get the knockdown. They may get tiny wins against you, but if you continue with your game plan and you have faith in your coach and the game plan that you had set out, you can win the fight. And he showed that.
Yes, experience won this fight for him. The thing about it is, even though those kicks were, I thought, was so important, the fact that it was the firefight that actually won the fight for him, because when TJ fired, Cody did what he naturally did, which was he started firing with him, but TJ connected first, and it was over.
Yeah, he recognized, even in the post fight, Dillashaw was like, "Ooh, I maybe shouldn't have gotten into that firefight at the end with him," because he did knock him down with a kick, and it kind of slowed Garbrandt down. But he even acknowledged that he might have jumped in a little bit too early, but it was just right, and he got the hook in, and he just sealed the deal for him. Pinned his arm down and won it.
Now, do you think, let's say that he didn't connect on that shot, and this is you being Nostradamus and figuring this out, but as you look at the way the fight was going, how do you think if that shot doesn't land? Because it was kind of a lucky shot who landed first there. How did you see the fight going the rest of the way?
Well, definitely the momentum was favoring Dillashaw, and towards that point in the fight, and the kicks were landing, as you mentioned. If it continued that way, but Cody made it out of the round, I think it teeters back and forth. This is like the ultimate pick'em fight for me because I think that they both make those adjustments coming out of that. Because I saw it with Cody when he fought against Dominic Cruz. He noticed that Cruz was landing some shots, and he changed his game plan a little bit round by round, just minor adjustments. And in this fight, you can have them fight 10 times, and you'd have a winner you'd have them both win 5 times. I mean, it's kind of that fight.
Okay. And that's where I was getting at, because I figured you would say something similar to that, because I don't agree with that. Not saying you're wrong or I'm right. When I looked at this fight, if you kept, let's say he doesn't land that shot, I thought because of the adjustment that TJ Dillashaw had done, those kicks were going to get Cody tonight. I thought TJ the corner had figured out how to get Cody, and I think even if the fight goes on, TJ gets him. But the statement of if they fought 10 fights, it'd be 5 out of 5. That's where I don't agree. Watching that fight, a fresh Cody versus a fresh TJ, I do think it would be different. I think Cody would win most of those fights. Cody is stronger. Cody is faster, a lot faster. I was surprised at how fast Cody was, and Cody is powerful. That headshot, the headshot that dropped Cody wasn't quite the same after that. But if you look at that fight, I picked TJ to win. But looking at it now, if they did a rematch, I would take Cody every single time.
Yeah, that's tough for me because I have to take it in a vacuum. I mean, if I when I look at it and I say they fight 10 times, I think that it resets everything, right? I mean, they don't have the previous experience of winning or losing.
Well, I'm saying if they did have the previous experience, let's say I'm saying if they did a rematch right now in 6 months, they're doing a rematch. Who are you taking?
I take Cody.
I'm taking Cody.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy that took TJ Dillashaw by knockout. I wouldn't take it again.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. I look at both of their styles, and they are each other's kryptonite in a sense. You have a long, rangy style with multiple angles and diverse ranges of attack in TJ Dillashaw. And then in Cody, you have this very calculated, distance-managing brawler with absolute power to finish anybody.
Uh-huh.
And in order to win, they have to both enter in each other's game, in a sense. And that's where it gets difficult for me, because if you look at that first round knockdown that Cody had, there was a thunderous left hook coming right after that right hand that would have ended TJ's night had it landed.
Right, I agree with you.
And if you go back to that, I mean, there's different angles, and now that TJ knows that he can implement those leg kicks, and he found out like that tiny chink and adjustment in Cody's armor, which who knows if Cody adjusts against, that could be Cody's weakness too.
I tell you what, if he doesn't do something about the kicks, Cody's going to have problems because someone's going to exploit those kicks.
Yeah,
and there's better guys that can throw much better kicks than TJ Dillashaw.
Oh, most definitely. I need to see more jabs out of Cody. I mean,
well,
he just goes for that knockout,
you beat me to it. That was my next statement.
Yeah.
I was going to say, can Cody adjust? Because one of the things I looked at is Cody threw a couple really nice jabs, but Cody doesn't throw jabs at all. And I don't understand, because if he throws those jabs, I'll give you the credit. You saw it first. Those jabs could change Cody's life as far as he's a dominant fighter, but what happened to him in this fight could happen to him in many other fights, where it's just when someone engages him, he's going to engage them back, and it comes down to who has more guts. I'm going to draw a line in the sand, and we're just going to fire, and who lands first wins. Well, that lucky shot or skilled shot or whatever you want to call many guys can land that shot on Cody because Cody's just going to engage with you. If Cody incorporated a jab, he would eliminate a lot of the luck of the draw of someone just getting lucky and cracking him. Do you agree or disagree?
I totally agree. He has this beautiful jab. He's a beautiful technical boxer. He's an amateur. He came from the amateur boxing background. He can just pop out the jab. His shoulder is kind of just like a hinge that pops out, and that's what you see with beautiful boxers, where they can just pop it out and it doesn't influence kind of their stance or where they are at. And he also has a beautiful leg kick. He just doesn't implement them in his game plan because he's going for that knockout. And as you mentioned before, if you look at the division, if he fought someone like a John Dodson or a John Lineker, those hooks and that firefight is there. And then you're just playing with odds and who's going to land first and who's going to throw the more compact hook and who has the timing.
Well, Dodson's not going to fall for that. But Lineker's a guy that could get lucky and land a shot strong enough to hurt him when he is by far clearly the better fighter.
Oh, definitely, yes.
But there's too much gamble in his game.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you throw a hook, he's going to throw a harder hook. You throw a jab, he's going to throw a hard hook. You know, it's going to be a fight. He likes the fight. But when you fight that way, you live by the firefight, you die by the firefight. And that's what happened to him in this fight. TJ stunned him with a kick, but then TJ threw a shot. He instantly countered with another shot, which he is super fast. But then the combination with TJ, it landed first, and it was over.
Yeah.
His shot could have landed, and it could have been over for TJ. But it was a gamble. Yep. Do you see that?
Yeah. That's where the next level comes in for
yes.
Cody. We can see the growth in it. Will he be able to make the adjustments? Will he be able to analyze his weaknesses and be able to fix that?
Because if he takes that gamble, if he takes that firefight and that gamble out of his game, he's the better fighter between him and TJ.
Yes.
But if you're going to keep doing that, you open yourself up to who lands first, and then TJ can adjust his game, and that's why TJ's the champion and he is not. Next, TJ wins. We're going to talk about what's next for these two guys. TJ wins, and he instantly talks about Demetrius Johnson. He says he can make the weight, no problem. It's not going to be a catch weight. He wants to go down and stop that streak. Give me your thoughts.
Man, that's a hell of a fight. I'm really interested to see that fight. TJ would obviously have to cut out a lot of the muscle that he says he has to put on to make the 135-pound weight class. And then in this, that's a hard fight for me to pick on. I mean, because Mighty Mouse is so disciplined in all facets of his game, but he hasn't fought someone ever since the fight with Dominic Cruz that had that height advantage on him. And I haven't seen anybody that can throw such a diverse range of attacks offensively against him. So I'm kind of just thinking about how this fight plays out. It's really hard to see. I could see it going both ways. I don't know how Mighty Mouse is going to be able to handle that size factor. And
so you say you're leaning toward TJ?
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just throwing stuff and trying to see what sticks. What I think is Mighty Mouse is a more fundamental and technically sound fighter. And I think if anybody's going to win, if anyone needs a knockout to win, that's going to be TJ. But I just don't see that.
You notice I'm being very patient and just listening to you. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. I just think that Mighty Mouse is going to have what it takes to dismantle TJ. And I'm going to say that right now. It may change, but that's what I say.
Good. I'm going to tell you this right now. It's bad news for TJ. It's a bad decision all the way around to go do this. Let me tell you why. Number one, he had to build a lot of muscle to make that weight. He's already champ. So he's going to have to break down the muscle to go back down. When you break down muscle like that, you lose a lot of strength. Ask Rashard Evans. Next thing. So he's going to lose a lot of strength going down there. Mighty Mouse is going to be the more technically sound fighter. He's going to be the faster fighter. But he's not going to be faster like as in like Cody, where it's like, I'm faster, but I'm going to get in these firefights. Demetrius he's a technician.
Disciplined.
He is a disciplined surgeon in there. He's going to have more stamina. Power difference because of the breakdown is not going to be there. He's going to have the speed difference. I think he's a much better ground fighter. I think it's all bad for TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw. TJ, I would take Demetrius to win easily. That's the thing that's crazy. I think he would win easily. And I think after he gets his butt whooped by going down and messing with the Mighty Mouse, he's going to go back up. He's going to put the weight back on. And it's not going to come back on the way it was. And that's going to put him, when he drops that weight and then comes back up and he has to deal with guys like Cody and Dominic Cruz, it will hurt him in the long run. No matter what, I think it's a lose-lose situation for TJ Dillashaw. Bad move. What's your take?
Now, I'm gonna backtrack.
No, I didn't tiptoe around this at all, did I?
Yeah, no. I can see where you're coming from too, and I can see that happening. It's just I want to backtrack to
and reason and where I come from that is Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah,
when Roy Jones was the most unstoppable fighter I'd ever seen in my life, the best fighter I'd ever seen. He moved up in weight to fight John Ruiz to win the heavyweight title. Then he moved back down in weight to fight Antonio
Tarver, yeah.
The thing about it, when you lose weight, one of the most important muscles that you cannot lose weight with is your neck. Your neck is the key to a fighter. And what happens when you lose weight? You lose weight in your neck, you lose strength in your neck, but also the neck controls how much damage you get as far as getting knocked out. Roy was never the same. Roy still had the hand speed. He had the skill, but you could knock Roy out after that because he lost the power in his neck. I watched the thing on Sports Science, and they talk about how the neck muscles determine how a person gets knocked out. That's the key. And when you break those muscles down, you don't get them back. That's why it's a bad decision. I think it will damage his career as far as going down and going up. Roy was never the same. A lot of other fighters have never been the same by going up and going back down. It's a bad decision.
It's very interesting what's going to play out, and it's going to be a very interesting case study on weight cutting in the sport, which is a very controversial topic.
Didn't think you were going to talk about that, did you?
No, I didn't think I was going to talk about that. That's very interesting. But what I wanted to talk about earlier is I wanted to backtrack to when we were talking about the flyweight division and previous fights that we've talked about. We both kind of agreed that John Dodson was the biggest challenge to Mighty Mouse there.
Absolutely.
And
John Dodson's the only, and that's the other reason why I got TJ. John Dodson's the only guy who ever cracked Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, and he's the only guy who really ever had a speed advantage against Mighty Mouse. And I don't see that. I don't see TJ bringing a speed advantage in that fight at all.
Nope, not at all.
The only thing that I'm kind of considering is that length. And I've seen how Mighty Mouse has struggled with length at times when he fought Tim Elliott. He just hasn't been acquainted that frame. And the thing about TJ is he has a very unorthodox style. While he's hittable, he does present a lot of different range in terms of his kicks and his punches and some of the wrestling that he can chain together. And that's where this fight is kind of interesting to me. But I still got to go with Mighty Mouse.
And here's the reason why I didn't bring up the length, because you brought up a good point about the length. But when I think about Demetrius and TJ Dillashaw, it's kind of like when Tyron Woodley was talking about game bred events against
Wonderboy?
Against Wonderboy. And he was saying game bred didn't bring in the right people. Because you got to prepare for that. You got to have weeks of preparing for fighting someone with a totally different style like that. When I look at TJ Dillashaw, Demetrius can go back on his experience from fighting Dominic Cruz. So he has that experience, in-ring experience. But he can bring in a ton of guys that have range that he can practice against, adjusting to the different length of that TJ Dillashaw have. You can prepare for this fight.
But what about the angles and the punches and the combinations that Dillashaw works with Bang Ludwig on?
Combination of experience with TJ Dillashaw being with Dominic Cruz and practicing with guys with longer reach, I think is enough to make him the far superior fighter. That's just my thoughts.
I think he's a great fighter. The fight that I was honestly more interested in was a potential Cody Garbrandt versus Mighty Mouse.
Now that was an interesting fight. Now I'm with you on that one. Now that one I was fascinated by. I still say it would have made Cody. It'd have been dangerous for Cody when he moved back up, but going down, I thought that would have been the fight that I think was the scarier fight. Was fighting Cody versus Demetrius Johnson, not TJ.
Yeah,
that's just.
I mean, I think they're. I watched some of the hooks that Cody throws.
Yes,
and those are hooks from low weight classes. Those are, but they pack the power of upper weight classes.
Yes, I agree with you.
And that's a dangerous fight for Mighty Mouse.
Yes, I definitely agree.
So what do you think happens with Cody Garbrandt?
Cody is going. They're gonna set up if you have a situation where TJ. Wait, didn't Dominic Cruz break his arm?
He did. He's out 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Well, 6 to 8 probably.
Newsflash: Dominic Cruz is not fighting this week because he broke his arm. Do you give a little more information on that, because that's one of the things we didn't talk about.
Yeah. So for the 218 UFC 218 event. Dominic Cruz was slated to fight Jimmy Rivera, who's an upcoming fighter. He's on an amazing win streak. And this was going to be a fight that kind of determined who was next in line for the bantamweight challenger spot against whoever won. Obviously, it was TJ this fight. But the thing is that Dominic Cruz, who's prone to injury as in the past, he actually broke his arm in training. And that fight has been... that fight itself has been scrapped, but they're waiting to find some challengers. But I just don't think it's going to work timing-wise because of the fashion that Cody was finished in his last fight.
Okay, here's my take on some of this and what I think's next. Okay, TJ is going to fight Demetrius. Now that Demetrius has the record and TJ now has a title, that's a big money fight that Demetrius can get behind. So that fight is going to happen. It works out perfectly. Dominic Cruz has to heal up his arm. Cody is not going to get a rematch because, like a lot of people thought, like he deserves a rematch. No, he doesn't. He won the title and he never defended it. And
he got knocked out.
Let's
be honest.
And, he wasn't reigning and defending champion. He was just champion. So, if anyone deserves an immediate match, I say it would be Dominic Cruz. So what's the best match to make in that division if TJ Dillashaw is going down to fight Demetrius Johnson? But a Cody Dominic Cruz 2 fight. That's the only fight that can be made. Any other fight in that division is a UFC Fight Night fight. But Dominic Cruz versus Cody, that's a pay-per-view event.
Yeah, it's a good event right there. I mean, that's a good fight right there. But what happens with Jimmy Rivera? And another thing that's rumored to happen is that Aljamain Sterling is calling out Jimmy Rivera for that late fill-in spot. That could work out. I mean, that could be a good fight. I just see Jimmy Rivera winning in that fight. And I do want Jimmy to fight someone that challenges him, that's up in a weight that presents another issue, and the only fights left for him are Dominic Cruz and Cody Garbrandt to up his profile before he gets a title shot.
Jimmy Rivera is not no disrespect to Jimmy Rivera if you're listening, but he's not a needle mover.
He's not, and that becomes the promotion side of the
The UFC is about making money, and making a Jimmy Rivera, Dominic Cruz, Jimmy Rivera, Cody fight, or TJ Dillashaw. There's nothing there. There's not much there. I do like, and if I was Aljamain Sterling, under no circumstances do I take that Jimmy Rivera fight on short notice.
No, I don't. I want my best self out there.
Aljamain Sterling needs to get out of Aljamain Sterling's way.
Yep.
He has all the skill. He has all the talent. He has the look, everything. He just has to make smart decisions. I don't touch that. What I do like, though...
Oh, I was looking at that, too. I'm interested in that.
See, you guys can't see this, but I just clicked on John Dodson. That's who I think would be a good fight. Jimmy Rivera versus John Dodson. That's what I would like to see.
I like where you're going with that. I like to see that fight.
But Aljamain Sterling should not touch that fight.
No. And another fight that would be also very interesting. The UFC just acquired him. It's Marlon Moraes. He's from Bellator. He's a good fighter. You wanna keep your eye out for him if you're looking at the state of the bantamweight division. He could fight any of those guys, and it would be a very entertaining scrap.
Not a needle mover, though.
No, definitely not. But
okay.
Technique-wise and on paper, I like to see those things.
Okay, so that concludes us talking about the bantamweight, the new bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw, and what's going to happen next. Now, we're going to go on another break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about my heartbreak, my shock. Left me speechless. I'm still speechless. Joanna Jedrzejczyk is not Joanna champion anymore. We'll talk about that when we come right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, we are back, and we are about to start talking about the shocker of the night for me. Once again, I'm your host, Tate. I have Will here.
What's up?
And I also have Miss Sarah.
Hello. You brought me in for the sad part. I might cry, just, to warn you.
I know she's, I don't know what Karen Bryant's podcast is called, but she's talked about Joanna Jedrzejczyk being her spirit animal. And I can't disagree. She is definitely, I hate to use the same term, but she's definitely been my spirit animal. She's been the most rounded fighter, the most unstoppable force. And then she got knocked out. How does that happen? Joanna Jedrzejczyk got knocked out. Does anyone
quickly?
Yes. Does anyone have please tell me that there's going to be Christmas this year, because things have been turned upside down in my world here.
I mean, 11 would do that.
So, we have a new champion in Thug Rose, and I love Thug Rose. I love saying Thug Rose. I have been a big fan of her ever since The Ultimate Fighter. I thought she should have been the very first strawweight champion, but she was going up against a force of nature. I thought she had no chance at all. And then the fight happened. As a matter of fact, and everyone kept giving, I think everyone has revisionist history, because everyone's talking about how calm and cool Rose was. I personally thought that Joanna was breaking her mentally, but then when they got in the ring, the fight never looked right to me. What was you guys' thought on the fight? I'm going to let Sarah go first on this one. Give me your thoughts.
I was so calm going into this fight. I didn't have any nerves. I'm like, okay, we're going to watch this. It'll be a good fight. Rose is a great fighter. But, I had no doubt that Joanna was going to win. I just didn't have any doubt. And so I'm sitting there and I'm watching the fight, and then she looks great, and then the fight starts, and she doesn't look like Joanna. She just didn't quite look like her normal self. So I was shocked, yes, but in retrospect, I can see that Joanna didn't quite look like herself.
I agree. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I came in with a similar prediction as you that Joanna would just run rampant on anything that Rose had for her, and I thought it was going to be like all the other fights that Joanna's had, where the challenger is always bloodied and looking very disfigured when the fight ends, and it didn't happen like that.
The crimson mask that you talked about.
I talked about the crimson mask. I thought it was going to happen. And it was far from that. And I was really surprised by how technical and patient Rose was. Even though she's shown glimpses of that before. I didn't see it coming against someone like Joanna, who was spending all of fight week proverbially getting into her head. And it just didn't happen like that.
All right. When I looked at this fight, and I've watched it too many times, I need therapy. And Joanna didn't look right. I kind of think like it was, I don't know if it was nerves. Joanna's timing was horrible this fight. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned that beforehand, even before I thought it wasn't, Joanna tends to be more susceptible to getting caught early in fights. But I went back, and when we watched it again today, I counted how many shots did Joanna throw when the fight first started before she actually landed a real shot. How many shots did she throw that was short of the mark? It was 18 straight shots that I thought would landed that was like short of the mark, that she just clearly missed. Like she was throwing at air. It was like her timing was off. She wasn't engaging. It was like, and it seemed like, and maybe Joanna knew something that we didn't know. It was like she was fearful of Rose's power because she didn't want to get too close to Rose that she could get countered. And so I felt like her kicks were short. I felt like her jab was short. Her hook was short. Everything. And I mean, it wasn't just like she missed her by an inch. She would miss her by long distances. Do you recall that, Will? Remember me counting? Mm-hmm. And I was just counting missed shots that fell way short of the mark. That was not Joanna Jedrzejczyk in there. What's your thoughts, Sarah? No,
I agree. And we're going back to Will's comment from last week about the crimson mask, and there was no chance to even complete that because she really didn't get any significant strikes in order to do that. And then she was the one with the black eye and at the end.
Yeah, Rose, you know what? But in the difference where we were talking about how Joanna kept falling short of the mark, I thought Rose did an excellent job of closing the gap.
Yep.
Yeah.
She would keep herself at distance, and then when she would close the gap between them incredibly fast and tag Joanna consistently. Will, did you agree? What was your take? I mean, the fight wasn't very long.
I kind of agree with all of you guys. I mean, it was a combination of factors to me. I mean, I'm going to go back in history too. When you have a dominant champion like we've seen with an Anderson Silva, and a Ronda Rousey, where they start to call their retirement, where they're going to just continue to run rampant on people and just continue to go proverbially undefeated in their primes. And then it always gets to that point where they get a little too overconfident in their skills. And I feel like we didn't see that coming with Joanna because she's always been like that. But maybe in her mind, that was partially it.
I apologize for cutting you off, Will. I just wanted to interject there. This one I disagree on. And the only reason why I disagree with you on this is because of one thing that I know. If I didn't know this little fact, I would say absolutely. She just took Rose for granted. But you don't have a 13-week camp if you're taking someone for granted. Do you agree?
Well, what is the surprise that she was going to have for us? She was like, when she was doing the weigh-in, she's like, the boogie one's coming for you. I've got a surprise for you all. And what is that?
Oh, I know what the surprise is.
What was it?
She was going to get knocked out.
Surprise! Gotcha.
Surprise! I'm going to sleep. No. You can't talk about my
I know. I know. It hurts me. It hurts me to say that.
But I love Rose too. That's the weird thing. It's like, you got two girlfriends and they're fighting, but you love them both. That's
your life. We're not going to talk about it.
Don't knock it till you try it. Oh, sorry. Her surprise was that she was going to beat Rose, and then she was going to put herself in to fight the winner of the flyweight championship.
Okay, I mean, I expected that. I thought she was going to do something like implemented in her game plan.
No. She was going to be. She wanted to be champ.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so she was gonna go.
That's looking too far ahead too.
Yes.
To me, that's a little bit too far ahead.
But Joanna always does that. I mean,
Yeah.
before her last fight, she wasn't even that close to fighting her last fight, and she was already predicting who she was going to beat that person and then fight the winner of a certain fight. She always does that.
Yeah, it was just so surprising because she's just been calling everything and being herself and doing everything, but it just wasn't against the right person. Then,
if you're gonna give out the Nostradamus Award of the week, why not get it to Cody Garbrandt, because he said he was gonna win, knock TJ out, and go down and fight Dominic Cruz and Demetrius Johnson, and he was wrong on all accounts. So it wasn't just Joanna who made bad predictions. There was other bad predictions out there
like
as well.
Bisping, all the fighters generally made.
Yeah. In 217, the moral of the story of the Aesop fable is stop predicting what you're gonna do before you fight the guy that's gonna punch you in the face, because they were all wrong. Every one of them was wrong.
They're like completely opposite of right. Just
even Garbrandt, who said he was going to knock out Wonder Boy. All those guys were wrong.
Every single thing they said, the opposite happened. Like,
yes, even when Cody was in the ring and he said, "You're not making it out of this round." Well, he was kind of right. He didn't make it out of the round because Cody went to sleep. He didn't go to sleep, but he got stopped.
You're not going to take me down with this. I'm gonna win.
217. Don't go to New York and make predictions. Okay, that's the moral of the story. Now, when we look at this, I'm going to tell you this. This was my prediction. Was the crash and fall of the strawweight division, and I'm going to explain why I had this prediction going. And once again, UFC 217. Even in your head, don't make predictions, because I'm wrong. My prediction was Joanna was going to go in there and chew up Rose. And that would start the mass exodus of fighters flocking to the flyweight division. Because all those guys, the division had gotten cleaned out. And so when you look at Jessica Andrade and
Claudia
Gadelha.
All I can think of is how happy Claudia Gadelha must be right now, because
no, she's not, because she just lost.
She just got beat up.
Yes, but she, I mean, what was she going to do? Fight Joanna once a year?
That was going to be my prediction. They were all going to move up in weight. I thought all those people were going to move up in weight because they were like, they're not going to give me another title shot, so I have no shot at the strawweight title. I'm going to flock to. So all the top fighters I was going to predict were going to go to the flyweight division. That has been put on hold because Rose Namajunas is champion, Claudia Gadelha, Jessica Andrade, all of those guys, they have title shots coming up now. As long as Thug Rose is champion, the whole division has been rejuvenated. When you start looking at it as in Jessica Andrade, yes, title shot. Gadelha, title shot. Caroline Kovacevich, title shot. Tisha Torres is right there for a title shot. Michelle Watterson, She's right back in the picture again. Cynthia Calvillo, which could be the most dangerous person of all. Title shot. No one in their right mind was ever going to give Carla Esparza another shot at that title, even though she was the original champion. But now with Rose, she beat Rose. She gets a couple of wins, title shot. All these people, Felicia Herrick, who has won who's won a few fights in a row. She's in the title picture here. That's where we'll stop at. Paige Van Zandt is number 10. And wait a minute, though. I'm going to tell you this. The reason why, I know you guys laugh, but my prediction, and it has been talked about.
Stop predicting.
Oh, no. 217 is over.
Yeah.
We're no longer in New York. I'm back to the Nostradamus world. Miss Cleo, Paige Van Zandt versus the winner of the Ultimate Fighter flyweight division. Paige Van Zandt is going to get the very first title shot. That's my prediction. It's already been talked about, but I think it's going to happen. Whoever wins Ultimate Fighter, what's the best way to get that division kicked off but a Paige Van Zandt versus the new flyweight champion? That's box office. The UFC is about box office. That's a box office match. I predict that. But everybody from Alexa Grasso is number 11. All these women now are right back in the title picture. But when you look at this, if Joanna wins this fight, and let's say Joanna was the win, beat Rose in convincing fashion. What do you do with Joanna? You have to move her up in weight because you were going to say put her against Tisha Torres. Is it Cynthia Calvillo or nothing? This changed that whole entire division. It makes it very interesting. Just saying. So
let's talk about Rose as champion and how do we see her moving forward, because we've seen before it's not easy to be the champion and have to do all the promotions and do everything that goes along with that and still train. And how do we see her handling this new role?
Okay. Do you want to go first, Will, on that one, or do you want me? I know you don't normally hit the women's circuit that is hard.
I was going to say that it would be a complete reset button because all of those matchups are available now. And if I'm looking at the rankings right now, I don't know if Rose beats Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade was fierce in her fight.
She's a beast. She's a beast. But here's the thing. Rose is just as good. Okay, and this is kind of disrespectful to say this about Rose. And Rose, I love Rose, and I keep saying that. But when you remove Joanna Jedrzejczyk from the picture, and first off, Joanna is going to get an immediate rematch. And let's say that Rose gets past that. Jessica Andrade is a powerhouse. But I think Rose can handle her. Rose it's a coin flip. It's now there's a whole bunch of TJ Dillashaw, Cody fights out there. Jessica Andrade, Rose Namajunas, coin flip. Claudia Gadelha.
No, I have Rose.
I got Claudia Gadelha.
I got Rose in that.
Claudia Gadelha, I will take Claudia Gadelha against every single person in the in the strawweight division, including Joanna Jedrzejczyk for 2 rounds.
There you go.
After that is, she doesn't have the stamina. But the first 2 rounds, can't anyone. And that includes Jessica Andrade. Claudia Gadelha ran out of gas, and then Jessica Andrade just steamrolled her. But, it's a coin flip. Karolina Kovacevic, that's a coin flip. I take Rose against Tisha Torres. It's Michelle Watterson. That's
she already knocked her out.
I know, but that's one I take Rose. If Joanna doesn't get the title, the one person that is the scariest person in that division is Cynthia Calvillo. I'm telling you, I love her saying that when she's on the mat, she's like a shark in water, because that girl is dangerous. She's a superstar just waiting to happen. That was the one person that I always saw. I thought nobody in this division had a shot at all of beating Joanna Jedrzejczyk except for Cynthia Calvillo. Anyone has a take on that one? Sarah?
I disagree.
Go ahead, Will.
Go ahead, Will.
I saw her most recent fight. It was against Joanne
Calderwood.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
I was not impressed. I was not impressed by her ability to just be content with taking Joanne down.
Okay, here's the thing. Joanne Calderwood, in my opinion, is the most disrespected woman in the entire division. That woman, and I've done it, everyone overlooks her. She's a beast. She's just a beast with a squeaky voice that's kind of, she has a very unique voice, and I don't think fighters take people, the media, UFC, people don't take Calderwood as serious as she should. That girl's the real deal, and you got to be very careful or you will get your butt whooped by her. She's the real deal. I mean,
she is
and
the
I
real
think her
deal.
rankings is a little low, but I mean, this division is just loaded.
The thing about Joanne we're getting off topic here, but the thing about her is that she comes in and fights different fights at times. She gets tentative. I mean, in her fight against Valley Laterno, that was very impressive to me, and that was in the flyweight division. I was very impressed by that, but it's kind of like touch and go with her. Some fights she shows up and is a killer, and then the other fights she's just kind of just a little bit better than them, and then some fights she just gets it taken from them. Taken from her, and that was the fight that I saw against Cynthia Calvillo. When I see someone like Jessica Andrade or a Claudia Gadelha or even a Karolina Kowalkiewicz, I don't see them. I don't see them having problems with Calvillo.
Well, and see, oh no, see, I definitely do. I mean, can't lie to you. My take, I take Cynthia over every single person in that division that's not named Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And I'm going to say this right now. Joanna will not be the same fighter in the rematch. She's getting the rematch because she's been too big of an ambassador to the UFC. She's done everything the UFC has ever wanted and more. All the media, the impressive wins, she's technically in title matches, she's already tied Ronda because Ronda had one less. Ronda was given the title where Rose took the title.
Rose or Joanna?
Joanna took the title where Ronda was given the title. So in title matches, they have the same amount of title matches, Ronda and Joanna Jedrzejczyk. So I personally think the record is tied between those two. But going back to the fight, I don't think that. I mean, if you're like when Joanna was fighting Rose, there was too many shots that did not land, that never kept. There was nothing to keep Rose off of Joanna. In the rematch, I think they will see that she wasn't landing. I think she'll start faster. She'll connect more, which will keep Rose at a bay. And I think you'll see a very different fight in the rematch. What's your thoughts? And I'm going to have each of you go on the rematch. Thug Rose versus Joanna Jedrzejczyk. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go first. I
Okay.
mean, I would hope that they're going to, I would hope we would see a different fight. I mean, what's the point of having a rematch if you're going to do the same thing? So, and Joanna tends to be, I see her as a bit of a perfectionist, so I can't imagine that she's going to watch that fight and not make changes.
Will?
Well, I see it either repeating as a Rose win or it becoming a war, as you mentioned, because if Joanna makes it out of the first round, then it becomes a striking chess match. I don't think it's going to go to the ground much in this fight. So I see it being more of a technical match versus kind of like a Muay Thai versus more boxing heavy style that Rose has,
Okay.
And if it goes to distance, I'm going to have to give it to Joanna just because of all the championship fights that she's had. And
If it goes, as a matter of fact, if it goes to distance, I would predict in the rematch a unanimous decision on Joanna's part. But I could see this fight again being very similar, where round 1 and round 2, Rose will have the ability to crack Joanna again. I think the big difference will be the fact that she will be able to land more shots. She'll be able to close more distance. It's going to be interesting. I don't know when they're going to have the rematch, but there's already talk that it's going to happen. Even Dana said, Joanna has earned that right. So, is it going to be my last word? Does anyone else have anything else to say on this before we wrap this segment up?
Do you have a winner between that potential rematch?
Oh, I hate predicting against Rose because Rose has proved me wrong. But until I see Joanna lose again, I'd say Joanna did not come in as Joanna. This in the rematch, it would be the real Joanna, and I think the real Joanna is just a better fighter. I would take Joanna. And we're not going to wrap things up because one other question is, in the interview, Joanna consistently says, I did not tap out. I watched the video 30 Ways to Sunday. Joanna tapped out. Does everyone agree that she tapped out?
Yes.
I saw 2 taps.
Yes.
They were both by Joanna.
And I was trying to figure out, was she just trying to gesture her hand or something like that? Those were taps, right?
Tap, straight up. Nothing about it. Maybe she's just trying to keep that in her mind and have that champion mindset that we love about her. But
I think she was buzzed, and I also think that, people look down on a fighter tapping out, but I think it was a smart decision to tap out because she was done. And but I think it was a tap out. And I'm going to use that as our last segment. I cannot wait to see the rematch. Congratulations to Rose Namajunas. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, thank you for being a spectacular champion. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other fights on this card. Stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, we're back. And in the last segment, we talked, it was Will, Sarah, and myself. We talked about the Joanna Jedrzejczyk fight with Rose Namajunas. I'm not even going to say it's a Joanna Jedrzejczyk fight. The Thug Rose fight in which she became the new strawweight champion. And this last segment, we're gonna kind of cover some other fights on this card. And then we're also going to talk about what's next, what's coming up here, and some news in which Will has some updates going on here. Some other fights that we're going to talk about real quick. What was your take, Will, on Jorge Masvidal versus Wonder Boy?
I mean, I'm beautiful game plan and execution and just dismantling by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He was able to do what he's done to the rest of the division against Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal didn't really have any answers for him, even though he was landing some leg kicks and some body shots. It wasn't anything significant to win the fight. And when you're talking about Thompson, the only person in that whole weight division that I see beating him was a person that did beat him in Tyron Woodley, the champion.
Speaking of beating Wonder Boy and the Jorge Masvidal Wonder Boy fight, the winner of that fight was Tyron Woodley. And the reason why he's the winner is Tyron has gotten some really bad press because he's boring. and all this stuff. But he's not boring. But you have to fight Wonder Boy a certain way. And Tyron went into the lab and figured out how to beat an unstoppable force in Wonder Boy Thompson. And Jorge Masvidal is a beast of a fighter, but he didn't have an answer for Wonder Boy. And nobody else in that division, I think, has an answer for Wonder Boy except for Tyron Woodley. He's a champ for a reason. He fought like a champ. Part of being a fighter is you got to be strong. You got to have a good ground game. You got to have speed. You got to have power. But most of all, you have to have smarts. And Tyron Woodley proved he has smarts because he fought the perfect fight to handle Wonder Boy, and Masvidal didn't. What's your take?
I completely agree with you. Tyron gets a bad rep, but that man can turn off anybody's lights. And the only fighters that I see in the 170-pound division at welterweight ever beating Thompson would be a Tyron Woodley or a George St-Pierre. And even those fights, they're still kind of, as we saw them play out against Thompson, like anybody can win those fights, and it's just going to be dictated by how the fight goes. Those are the only fighters that I see having a chance at Thompson. And that's something to say about someone that's a number one contender.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the next fight because we're running to the end of our show. What do you think? What did you think about Hendricks and what is his name again?
You can call him Borrachina. He's Paulo Costa.
Paulo Costa or the Eraser. What was your thoughts?
I mean, it's a very admirable effort that Johnny Hendricks put on against him. But when you're talking about someone that is as impressive a prospect and as jacked as Paulo Costa is, it's going to be hard to beat him when you're moving up into a weight class that you're not supposed to be in the first place.
That's what I was just going to say. It wasn't, you said it was an admirable, fight for Johnny Hendricks. No, it wasn't. It was a blowout. It was an absolute blowout of between two fighters where one fighter should never have been in the ring with the other guy. Johnny Hendricks does not belong in this division. He needs to make weight, and he needs to go down back to his original division, or he's going to be out of the UFC sooner than later.
That was his last fight on his contract.
And I don't think he's coming back.
I don't think he should come back. I don't think that he has what he needs to be where he wants to be in this sport anymore. And that's obviously as a champion when he's looking and fighting on the same card as a George St-Pierre, the person that he thinks and he should have, in my opinion, beat for the title.
I didn't think that, but
very close fight, and it could have gone pretty much. It was just. I've seen more robberies than what happened there.
I scored that fight so many times, and I still had George winning it. But I always said the most damage was done by Hendricks, but the fight was won by St-Pierre. But that's nor here nor there. We're talking about Hendricks, and what do you think?
Well, he should go to Bellator.
And I think that he should go to Bellator. Absolutely. Paulo, I saw the future of the division. I really believe that he is the future of the division. He's young. He has a lot of skill. I want to see what happens next with this guy. I don't say rush him along, but this guy, when he says he's the next great Brazilian fighter, I believe him.
I see a lot of potential from him. I'm not going to jump the gun or anything, say that he can challenge the top 5 of the division. He is calling out a Derek Brunson at this moment, and I like that fight. I want to see where it goes. I want to see if he can withstand going long distances, the ground game, which we haven't seen much from him. I just want to see his gas tank. There's a lot of questions.
That's the thing I want to see. I want to see what his gas tank is like and what his ground game is. I don't like to make stereotypes, but most Brazilian fighters, the ground game is always impeccable, but gas tank has always been an issue. So that's the one thing. That's the only 2 holes that I haven't quite figured out. But this guy has championship caliber, fighter written all over him. Let's move on. One other fight that we're going to talk about, and that is OSP versus Corey Anderson. What was your thoughts?
Corey Anderson looked great up until
You were like Tony the Tiger. Great.
he looked great up until about the 3-minute mark of round 3. And even up until the 3-minute mark and 30 seconds of round 3. Until OSP just shut out the lights.
I don't know if I say he looked great. I thought OSP came in there a little slower, but he's also coming in off a short notice. OSP just knocked out Corey Anderson in spectacular fashion on short notice after coming off with a Fusion Okami Darce win, and then a Darce win before that. He's on a hot streak, and it's crazy to say this, but he's one fight away from a championship title shot.
I mean, the division is not as deep as it used to be, especially the light heavyweight division just being at the state that it is with what happened with John Jones and Daniel Cormier and whatnot. So it's ready for the taking if anybody's willing to take it.
All right. Before we wrap things up, Will, give us an update on the upcoming events and some changes.
So it was just reported recently that Frankie Edgar suffered a facial injury, and he will be pulled out of the fight with Max Holloway. And they're currently scrambling to find a substitute for Frankie since he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks before he can actually spar or get into contact again.
Jose Aldo.
Yeah, and that's the only fight that is potentially out there. There's also Cub Swanson who's waiting on the wings, but both of these men...
Cub, that's right, yes.
Yeah, both of these men have actually suffered defeats to Max Holloway, so it's up to the UFC who they think will do it. I think it's, personally, in my opinion, I think it's too early since Jose Aldo got TKO'd.
I agree.
So I'd rather see Cub Swanson, who's hungry, who's put together a nice win streak, and that's the fight that I want to see. The only question I have is, can they make the weight in time?
I hope it's Cub Swanson or anyone. I don't think Jose Aldo should have the fight. Conor McGregor lost one win
against Frankie, yeah,
and then a spectacular loss again. You don't get that fight. Cub Swanson or someone else, but it's not. I don't think it should be Jose Aldo. With that, we're gonna wrap things up. We really appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening to the show. And we hope you enjoyed what we had to say. And we will be back next week to talk a little bit more about the events that's gone on in the UFC, and if the card still holds together for this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully.
And with that, to all, a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.